other countries to print more of their own currency to swap, thereby causing even higher overseas inflation and causing demand for the dollar to rise even more. Or even worse, that would require other countries to sell their assets to pay for more dollars, which would also crash the market. But the biggest issue isn't so much what we already know about, it's what we don't know about. And since none of this is required to be reported on company balance sheets, there's an estimated $30 trillion of swaps that have not been accounted for until just recently. On top of that, it's also reported that economists still don't know exactly how these debts are spread among different kinds of shadow banks, so the problem could be a lot worse than what we expect. Bloomberg also makes the comparison that low interest rates have caused the global economy to take on excess leverage for higher returns. And now that borrowing costs are going back up, we can only hope that they've utilized that borrowing responsibly. Thankfully, for most of us in the US, these currency swaps are mainly happening overseas, so it's not like your local bank has $50 trillion in shadow debt they're not telling you about. And for almost everybody watching, this is going to have no direct impact on you. But the biggest risk is that the rise of the US dollar could continue to hamper worldwide growth. And if the dollar is in short supply, that increases the chances of a liquidity crisis similar to what happened in 2008 and 2020. Or basically, central banks and policymakers have no idea how to plan for such a risk when they have no idea just how big the risk really is. But there is one risk they are banking on, and that would be a global recession. That's because the International Institute of Finance went on record to say that worldwide growth in 2023 is expected to be weaker than the global financial crisis of 2009, mainly triggered by the contractions throughout Russia and Ukraine. And as they explain, the severity of the 2023 global recession will all come down to one thing: the cost of energy. Now, as a counter to this, beginning last Monday, Russian oil has been sanctioned with a $60 price cap throughout Europe, the US, UK, Japan, Canada, and Australia, meaning the maximum that they're able to pay is $60 a barrel in an effort to throttle funding to Russia. The goal is that this would impact Russia's ability to fund the war, while at the same time ensuring that the world does not cut itself off from natural resources, which would skyrocket the price that much higher than it already has. Although in terms of whether or not this would actually be effective, the answer is we have no idea. On the one hand, Russia responded by saying that they will not abide by the measure even if they have to cut production, and they're already reportedly selling oil for $60 a barrel, so we don't know if this is going to have much of an impact. But it does seem as though this was done with balancing global energy needs in mind, and there's nothing that says this price cap can't be adjusted again in the future. Beyond that, China's facing its own collapse while manufacturing orders declined 40% while lockdowns are still in effect, and as a result, many factories will temporarily shut down for 2 weeks in observance of their new year. Thankfully though, it does seem as though their restrictions are beginning to ease up, and for the entire world, this could help dampen rising prices that were caused by supply chain delays. So in terms of what you could actually do with this information, one possible option is probably not something that you would expect, and that would be bonds. See, what many people forget is that stocks and real estate don't just continually move higher every single year, and for people who want to keep cash on the sidelines, there haven't really been many great options until recently. With rates having risen at their fastest pace ever in history, studies show that government bonds have had the highest performance across the asset class, averaging as much as 6.6% throughout the last 4 recessions. Even though this still pales in comparison to the return of stocks following a bear market, if you have cash on the sidelines that you know you're not going to be investing in the short term, then these bonds could give you some additional upside and might even go up in value if you're holding on to them during a time that the Fed decreases their rates. In fact, one graph shows that on average in the first half of a recession, bonds typically go up by almost 5% during a time where equities decline by